Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Hiline. Today on the pod, we have Dave Wieseneck, expert in residence at Ramp. We got some really cool content to cover. Dave is a finance and accounting nerd like myself, so I look forward to the combo and let's get into it. All right, Dave, welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Pod, man. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really stoked to be here.
Yeah, this is our whole thing is finance and trying to help founders become better finance thinkers. And you're actually the first finance person that we've had on the podcast. So this is going to be fun. We're like kindred
That's surprising.
We're trying not to make it too accounting or too finance. We want it to be more about business building and how finance plays a role in it. So you get to be number one, man.
I love to hear it.
So let's kick it off with your current role. So you're the expert in residence at Ramp, and it looks like you've been doing that for about 9 months. What does that mean? Because it sounds like the best job in the world. Like, what is an expert in residence? What's your day-to-day look like?
So first of all, it is definitely the best job in the world. I still can't believe that they allow me to do this, but I've been a finance professional my entire career. I started off in audit at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which as audit, not the most interesting job to be done. It's necessary, but not the most interesting thing to do for long term. So I got my CPA and I immediately went into a bunch of different startups, first on the kind of controllership side, learning the craft of FP&A, until I was running and growing finance teams for a bunch of early stage startups. Today I'm at Ramp. So through all of that work that I was doing for early stage startups, I was leaning into the finance tech stack, and I was super interested in how all of these different tools, these different softwares fit together and use that to my advantage to build a really high functioning finance team. It's an accounting function with limited resources. And so because I loved doing that, I got on a bunch of customer advisory boards, doing product advisory to product teams.
And you're on like 75 of them.
Yeah, a bunch
you're
of really
on like every piece of finance technology, like you're in the circle.
Totally. And I loved it. And so I just shooted my shot with Ramp. And I said, listen, I love being on the customer advisory board. I would love to do this all day, every day. Could we make that happen? So I threw up a job description into ChatGPT. I said, what should we call this role?
Well played.
It came out with expert in residence as one of the 10, and I pitched it. And the team hired me here at Ramp. To give you a little insight, you asked, what is my day-to-day?
Yeah, what was in the job description? What's the day-to-day like?
So first off, I own our internal instance of Ramp. I am our administrator of Ramp. So just as you have a lot of clients on Ramp, someone's got to be the administrator. That's me. That's my role. I make sure that we're dog fooding the heck out of our own product. So I work closely. I sit on the finance team. I work closely with accounts payable, procurement, the people team to put in different spend programs for our team to deploy capital out to the team and issue out funds and cards to everyone. But then with all of that knowledge, right, because we're dog fooding the product, we're seeing the pain points, beta testing things before it goes out to customers. I take all of that knowledge and I do a lot of product advisory back to the product team. They can learn from all of the different issues and bugs that we find using our own product, and then help them understand, as they think about where the product wants to go over the next couple of years, how that looks like for us as the users and what we're interested in, what we want to get out of the product so that we can build a better product. So a lot of product advisory. I also work with the sales and marketing team to help them understand people like you and me, the finance persona, so they can pitch and sell and market to people like us. And then I do a bunch of evangelism. I host webinars, workshops, community events, things like that.
So you do all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty much. You get to do the fun stuff. Fun fact, I was an auditor for 9 years. Same sentiment, dude. Like I don't know why the hell I did it for that long. I'm pretty resilient when it comes to just like committing to something.
Yeah.
But I know the backstory all too well because I came up the same way you did. And we built an outsourced financial operations company. So our paths are similar. And I also sit on a bunch of product advisory boards, and we share the same love for financial technology. And I think more importantly, how the whole the office of the CFO really is going to evolve over time, and being able to piece that puzzle together and visualize what that's going to look like. And we can talk about that later. But That's awesome, man. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you why, of all the 75 advisory boards you sit on, why'd you pick Ramp? You could have done it with anybody.
No, it's a great question. I was on the customer advisory board of Navan, used to be called Trip Actions.
Yep.
Great product, especially for travel specifically. Ironclad contract management software. Let's see, JustWorks, which is a PEO, payroll software. Really good product.
Our head of talent and people is on the same advisory board at JustWorks too.
No way.
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
She's new to it, so you may not have met. Maybe I don't know.
We might not have overlapped in my time there.
Lindsay Tapping. Shout out Lindsay. Lindsay Tapping is also on the same board.
Lindsay. Yeah, shout out to JustWorks. I was also on the customer advisory board of Carta, which I don't know if you get used for cap tables for any of your clients, but it's a great piece of software. Honestly, with Ramp, like perfect timing of where I was in my career and what I was looking to do in that next step. I'm a finance professional, but this is allowing me to flex my muscles and do something different. So perfect time in my career to try something like this. Perfect time in Ramp's trajectory and where they are in their life cycle to want to hire someone like me. Like, I don't think if I tried this a year earlier or tried this next year, they would have necessarily gone for it. But I found like the perfect time for me and for Ramp. And it's a product where I have a ton of love for. I used it every day at my previous companies. And like, I love it, both as a product and how it helps me be a better finance professional, but also the brand is really fun, really cool. We just did an advertisement in the Super Bowl with Saquon Barkley. So that was super fun.
Dude, that's my team, the Eagles. Coming off a big win.
Congrats, man. Congrats.
Yeah, I noticed Saquon. I didn't know he was on the team before that, but I definitely saw it on the Super Bowl commercial. So
you knew he was on the Eagles. You mean you didn't know he was Ramp team?
So had we done the podcast a little sooner, could I have gone to the Super Bowl with you? Would Ramp have sponsored that potentially? Can we talk about that maybe for next year?
It's definitely possible. A few of our team members did go and sat with Saquon's team, which was really cool. So yeah, a few of our team members won.
Okay. So we're going to have to, we got some rapport building to do.
I hope the Eagles are in the Super Bowl again next year.
Me too.
Good luck.
Okay. So bringing us back to center. So when you think about the state of finance and accounting today, where would you place it? Like, how would you describe this moment that we're in? Because it feels like an inflection point where there is a lot of automation possible.
Yes.
There are a lot of different skills, and I would argue a very different persona required to fulfill the role of what a finance and accounting person needs to be able to do. Where are we at today?
Yeah, I think there's a few shifts going on. Like the first shift that comes to mind is that a lot of software over the past 10 years has been focused on other departments, right? Sales and marketing get the sexiest software out there. It's very user-friendly. It's always going to have the latest and greatest technology going to other departments, usually revenue-generating departments, or it comes to the back office. So finance tools have looked pretty ugly and have been stuck in like the 80s and 90s for a while. Obviously, we have things like NetSuite, which are great, but NetSuite's 20 years old, maybe even more, maybe 30 years old now. I think
it's not
25
modern.
years old. QuickBooks is 30 years old. QuickBooks Online, a little bit newer, but still pretty dated. Even Xero, right? Xero is 20 years old at this point.
Yep.
Those products, while they are definitely more approachable than ERPs, I think we're going through this inflection where a lot of the software for the office of the CFO is going to be much more approachable, have a lot better technology than the older generation of software. And we're catching up to other departments in terms of forward-thinking technology that's AI enabled and is like easier to use and much more approachable. It feels more consumer grade than enterprise grade, if that makes sense.
It does. How do you think about the old adage of bundling software, unbundling the software? I feel like we've gone back and forth between what's the right model. Like NetSuite tried to be everything, right? QuickBooks is taking a different approach where they've opened their API up. They have a bunch of technology. You can build an ERP for a subscale business right now with tools like Ramp and stuff. Where do you see it going? Do you think we'll stay in this open sourced, unbundled software stack situation? Or do you think it's going someplace else?
I think there is always, right, there's always going to be this want to build an all-in-one system. And even for Ramp, we're going to bundle up a bunch of different products, right? But The approach that I think is going to win out are open systems that say you can work. We have an open API. You can use us for this. You can use us for that. Ultimately, you're going to want to build your own perfect stack with kind of best of breed for different functions. And it's an open community. It's an open marketplace, but there are advantages from using multiple products from a same vendor. There are advantages for using the expense module, the reimbursement module, and bill pay all from Ramp, but you could use each one on its own and use something else if that's what you prefer. I think when it comes to all-in-one like NetSuite, what you noticed is that a lot of their functionality is not very good because they can only spend a limited amount of resources on their expenses module or their RevRec module, which if you go out to a vendor that just does RevRec is obviously going to be much better.
You like to use one of those ERP systems, there's this admin debt that you accumulate because it's so expensive to run it, maintain it, implement it. And what I appreciate about even QuickBooks is like this, but like time to value has come way down. You can get things set up, spun up, optimized, deployed very quickly. The thing that I find challenging about all the disparate systems is your data is all over the place. Now, all the tools have AI capabilities. And for us as an outsource provider, we have access to all these different systems for all of our clients. There's so much power in that data. But because it doesn't all talk to each other, and some of that probably is by design, that is the one challenge. So I hope we move to a place where it's great that all of these tools have their own AI capabilities, but we don't have the ability to use that inside of an org the way that you would really want to.
Correct. And I think it just means that you have to be conscious of the tech stack that you're building, how the data flows from transaction to reporting, and you architect the right system for your size of company and for your like growth trajectory. So I don't think one size fits all where this product's going to work for everybody. I think you just need to architect your own data model, your own system, your own stack, what's right for you. I'm sure that you guys as a firm have preferred vendors and preferred stack that you'll deploy. But obviously, if you take on a new vendor, they might have a stack that's already in play and you want to be able to support that.
Yeah. So with vendors, that's obviously important to us. Like, how do we get access to the data? How do we manage it at scale? How do we keep controls in place? With clients and new customers, we're selling a stack. It's like, we won't take whatever. They're like, we use X, Y, and Z. We're like, that's great. If you trust us to know better and like the best systems, then you need to use our systems. Otherwise, we're probably not a good fit. So we'll disqualify for that reason. If they're using something compelling that's new, we will then say, you know what, we'll take it on. We should probably learn from this. We'll use it as like an R&D moment. But we try to not end up managing 100 different systems.
I like that.
For the same reason, because then I have no shot at using the data to get smarter about our customers and what they care about. And it can just become like this giant Gordian knot that is impossible to untie.
And you become more efficient because you're using a common tech stack. You only have to train your team on certain tools and become experts on that. That's great.
Yeah, it's easy to build automation on. It's not that we own the technology. We procure and implement the technology for our clients, and we pay the cost and we bundle it into a managed service. That allows us to do some of the stuff at scale that you're describing, which is control it.
Yeah.
And it's hard for small businesses sometimes to spend the time to go out to procure RAM and then set it up the right way. And like the way that you actually would want to do it, your team's probably experienced this. It's when you're wearing a lot of hats, you don't have the leverage and you're chief everything officer. It's hard to expect somebody to be thinking that deeply about their systems.
Totally.
So our clients are all SMBs, generally less than 50 employees. They lean on us to do a lot more of that for them, which makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah. And say when you're buying software, there's obviously the cost that's on the order form, right? Whether that's $10,000, $20,000, whatever. But there is a huge cost that is not on that order form, right? The cost of change management, the cost of maintenance, of keeping that current and implementing the new features as they come out. There is the political capital cost, right? The internal cost of convincing your team or a company, or in your case, a client, for moving from one software stack to another. There's a big cost that comes with software. And so you want to always take that into account and know what you're getting into before you take on too many projects or new software.
No, and there's so many new shiny toys out there in the market right now that it's hard. You got to stay focused and disciplined about it. So when you think about current state of finance, accounting, small businesses, big businesses, whatever. I don't know, like when you think about Ramp's market and you have 32 million small businesses, there's 33 or 34 total businesses. Is it the market share that you have and Bill has and everybody has, like still so small? And there's so many companies that have still not adopted modern systems for some reason. What's the biggest reason for that, do you think? Who's inhibiting progress?
Who's inhibiting progress? I think inertia is usually the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like change management is usually going to be the answer, right? It's working or it's in place already. So you have to find that pain and make sure that pain and whatever you want to implement, if it's Ramp, that we will alleviate that pain and be worth it. If it's just replacing one for one what you have already in place, it's probably not going to be worth it. So what are the advantages? What are the benefits of being on something like Ramp? And is that better than what you have in place? It's that. And then it's also like older mindset of doing things, right? The bookkeeping industry is a conservative bunch, right? Accountants are relatively conservative in using technology. I think that is changing, obviously, as our tools become more approachable, easier to deploy, faster time to value. It's a much better pitch and it's becoming easier to deploy. So I think that is starting to change, but there's still like this old way of doing things. And that's usually rooted in having control over the process, even if it's painful for your team or even for yourself.
Politically correct answer. So I'll frame it this way. And you've probably experienced this at Ramp. We have very talented product founders who are in the finance, accounting, tech space, identified a problem, have a vision. They've done the market research to understand the market opportunities there and the pain points are there, but they have to sell into the persona of the accountant. And even though the business owner, I can speak from Hiline's perspective, my clients are the ones who maybe like you're putting in like your test group for like, I think we can solve the problem from this ICP. This is a Hiline customer. We know that the end customer is not going to adopt anything unless we go through Matt Hiline. And Matt Hiline is saying, I don't want to change, my systems work fine. Or it's not good enough, or it doesn't do this thing, even though it probably solves for the pain point, but it doesn't do it in the way that the accountant would prefer that it gets done. So it, like progress gets blocked. And it's like this really interesting industry where the technology innovation has almost only gone as fast and far as the accounting profession has allowed it to go. And I find that to be so interesting that the accountants have had so much like power over that. And it's contradictory to everything about product market fit that you would think about as a technology builder and founder. And I don't know that there's another industry like it, maybe other professional services spaces. And I get it. I do get it.
Do you think because accountants in general, bookkeepers tend to skew a little bit older and they're just hesitant to change?
I think accounting by definition is the recording of history. Everything that accountants have been taught has been to record history a certain way. And they've been taught to be skeptical. If you went to public accounting, you've been taught, if you were an auditor, like you were taught to not trust anything. Actually, you weren't even taught to trust but verify. You were taught to verify. And I think that the persona of a CPA and accountant and what they teach in school and how they recruit and the types of personalities that are attracted to the profession, and it's still true to this day, I think in most cases, is very different than the persona that is required for this industry to flourish at scale. And there are not nearly enough Daves and Matts out there that believe that. And I think eventually it will catch up and it will resolve itself. But I think it's just forced things to go a lot slower than I would have expected them to go, to be honest.
I think that's right. I also think there's building a core GL is really tough to do. It is the store of all of your financial information. There is hesitancy with replacing something like that. It needs to be really performant. And so you can't just build something overnight. It is a system of record. It's not a workflow application. Obviously, swapping out a workflow applications could be much easier than something like a system of record. That's why I'm really excited for some of the newcomers when it comes to ERPs and GLs. Campfire, Rillet.
Shout out Digits.
Digits, yeah, for sure. Puzzle as well, right? The new core GLs, new accounting systems that are built in today's technology, not 20 years ago. Even though QuickBooks and Xero and NetSuite Intact are very performant and they do a great job. They're a little bit older. What's going on here? So I'm excited for kind of the newer players out there, but they have an uphill battle, right? It's very hard to convince people to switch ERPs. I switched at my last company, I switched from QuickBooks to NetSuite. Right. And for 2 years, I still kept paying QuickBooks like $100 every single month because I didn't want to lose access just in case I needed a transaction from 2 years ago. Right. I kept it there just in case. So I kept them paying money, $1,000, $1,200 every single month, every single year, just in case I needed that. And I think that tends to play into a lot of people's decision-making when it comes to your system of record, your PL system.
Yep. I think the only reason for somebody to move is if they place value on something more than just a P&L and a balance sheet, which I honestly think most operators of companies do. They don't necessarily want to view it that way, but that's just the way that it's always been given to them. They don't really know it, that it's fair to expect a different way. But like, I think about, and my kids are too young, they're 7 and 5, but like anybody who's in high school right now, they're growing up with ChatGPT in their pocket. They want like instant information. They are going to expect a lot more from like a GL. Like those future business builders are not going to be satisfied with QuickBooks. Like they're going to adopt these stuff way faster.
As we should, right? A GL, financial statements, are there to help you make a financial decision, right? A strategic decision. You expect more from your accounting software and from your financial statements. They are there for you to put it to work. And so whatever shape that comes into, we should definitely expect more from it.
Yeah. So I think that's when it's going to get challenged more. I think about like my dad who's in his 60s and he had his own business for 40 years. Not a chance in hell. He's moving into a new AI-enabled general ed. He's just not going to do it. The risk to him is just not worth it. But it's coming. I think it'll happen faster as we get a little bit deeper into 2020, 2030. But it's definitely, I see it evolving pretty quickly.
Yeah. One of the really cool things, obviously there's AI-enabled software. I think that's going to be really interesting. Where I'm super excited about is not just the software that's AI-enabled, but also the workers, operators of AI. So can we deploy bots and operators to do the work for us so we can spend more time on strategic work? I think that's where it's going to be super interesting over the next couple of years.
Dude, so I have this, I can't do it this year. We have too much to do this year, but I do have this vision of a role, a credential that speaks to what you're talking about. But it's, I think the future.
Wait, what's that role? Tell me about that role.
I can't tell you because I got to trademark it before I can tell you what it is. I'm not ready to do that yet.
I want that job.
There's 2 skill sets you're going to need in finance. To be a finance professional, you're going to have to understand systems and how data flows between them. If you can't do, and how to use AI in that whole mess. If you can't do that, I don't think that you're going to be able to be in finance. And you're going to have to be able to leverage all that technology to be a storyteller and to do strategic work. And there will be no market for somebody who can just focus on recording history and wants to do it in a ledger book or in an antiquated system. I just don't think you're gonna get paid to do that. I just don't think that's a job anymore. And I don't think that's that far away.
I totally agree. When I think about accounting, right? First of all, when I think about a business, what is a business, right? A business is a sum of all of its contracts, a sum of all of its transactions. Every single transaction is a contract, right? You swipe your card, you pay a bill. That is a contract. I'm going to pay you. You're going to do this for me. Yeah, that's a contract. So every single transaction or every single business is just a sum of all of its transactions. And an accountant's job, historically, a bookkeeper's job, has been to shepherd the transaction from origination into a system, a core GL, so that you can report on it later. All we do is move the transaction from one subledger to a ledger, and we enrich that transaction with a little bit of data. We call that coding, right? It's coded to this GL, to that department, to this location. Now it's in the GL. Cool. It's on its way. And then at the end of the month, you close the books and you report on it. And it's a sum of every single transaction, obviously in a P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow, but it's just a sum of all of the transactions added up with those pivots on it. That entire transaction layer can be and will be and should be automated. What you're doing is shepherding it from one system to the other and adding a little bit of context. That context, of course, usually, first of all, it's very repeatable. It's usually the same context over and over again. There is some human inference, you make a call, should it be this department, that department? Okay. But that's all usually rules-based. We can code that we can prompt an AI, a bot, to think as we do, and then make those decisions. Is it going to get 100% right? No, but it will get most of the transactions right. And then we can really just manage by exception.
Dude, the dirty secret is they make less mistakes than humans, but humans are more comfortable doing the work. And we know this because we use a lot of RPA and we use rules in a way that when you get into like class tracking and like department level tracking, it's harder to do it. But for like your most basic, 90% of it we can do with RPA. And we have a QC process that we also use RPA for. And we know that humans make way more mistakes than RPA. The mistakes we find are always made by the humans, but the humans don't trust the technology, which is this really interesting dichotomy. But
I think that's going to change. And I think it's going to change fast. I think we are going to get much more used to it. But once we do that, once we get used to it and we deploy bots and we are now taking ourselves out of that transaction layer, spending all of our time on the strategic work, that's going to allow us to be much better partners to our organization, to our CEOs, provide a ton more value, help us make better decisions. That's where I want to spend my time. To your point, right? The job to be done or the skill set will be how to architect these systems, how to prompt and deploy bots to do the work, and oversee. Just as you manage a bunch of associates on your team, junior associates, you train them, you review their work, do quality checks. You're just going to do that for bots now. And everybody will learn that, how to deploy bots to do 10 times the amount of work that you could do today.
Yeah, and it's still a business. It's still a job. It just looks different. And the scale at which you can do it's very different. And not everybody's going to do it that way. The reality is you still have QuickBooks is still like, how long have they been saying they're going to sunset QuickBooks Desktop?
20 years. This year's the year, right?
They're going to do it this year, except half of their users still are afraid to move even their QuickBooks into the cloud. Yeah. So that just tells you we're so early on the technology adoption curve. It's really interesting.
So you're interested in creating that role. Have you used bots, agents to do some kind of manual journal entry work?
You're talking AI agents, right?
Yes.
We're using a lot of RPA technology right now.
Okay.
To do a lot of what I think we could also do with AI agents. Honestly, one of the challenges that we have is it's so buzzy right now. AI is so buzzy right now. And there's a lot of consulting firms like, we do AI automation for you. And when you really look at it, all they're doing is they're like using low code, no code stuff. And it's not really true AI. So we haven't found a partner that we trust because this isn't like we're going to do it in a week.
It's the wild west out there right now, for sure.
We're going to have to commit time. So we don't have we have two, I'm going to call them automation specialists, like automation type engineers who, Eric Cohen's our head of technology. He's like us. He was finance and accounting, loves this stuff. So he's learned how to do a lot of this stuff himself. But if we don't have if I had an engineering team, then we could start, because I'm assuming Ramp, you have obviously a big engineering team. So it's easier for you guys to start to toy around with this stuff, but that's where it's going.
I would encourage your entire team. I would encourage everybody who's listening on this, start playing around with it, start practicing it. It's like yoga. Do a little bit every single day, try new things out, and you'll find some sort of rhythm that works for you. And you'll come up with really good use cases that are for your company, for your team, and then share the love, share it with the rest of us so we can all learn.
So if there's like a thing that keeps me up at night, it's that. The opportunity to innovate is here. There's a lot that goes into it because you got so many different technology systems clumped together. You got change management considerations, and humans have to be ready to do this. So I think there's some table setting that we need to do before we can get there, but it's coming. I feel like we should have started yesterday, but I still think that we're very out.
But it's still the first inning, right? Like nobody's figured out this at scale. It's still, no matter where we are, we're still in the first inning. It's still early days. So nobody's like behind on this. Just start tomorrow.
Yep. Plus the founder in me, man. I just never think there's no such thing as too fast.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a cool time to be in the space, man. For a long time, I don't know how you felt. Like there were times when I was in public accounting where I fell out of love with the hell, where's my purpose in life? It just seems like I'm destined for unhappiness in so many ways.
For public accounting, very particularly, yes. When I got my CPA, I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I learned a lot, and I feel like I'm very happy that I did it for the beginning of my career.
Yep.
But I went home at the end of the day, the end of the week, and I said, "Look, what did I produce? Like, you produce work papers. Your partner signed off on the financial statements. And by the way, when they sign off, they don't even say these financial statements are right. They just say there's no material misstatement where you would change your
Yeah.
mind from an
It could be
investment
wrong by
perspective."
$10 million, but it's close enough depending on how big of a company
Exactly.
you are.
So I said, what did I produce? Right. The
Yeah.
best case scenario is that my work papers that I wrote out, they go into a box. They put that box into a closet for 7 years. And then after 7 years, they throw it out. If they open up the box, someone messed up, and that's not a good thing, right?
Yep.
So like the
Yeah.
best case scenario is someone never looks at my work papers again. And so I
Yep.
just felt like I wasn't creating anything. But when you go and you work for a business or you work for a firm like yours, you are creating real value. You are creating a business. You are building a business with the founders, with everybody else on your team. That's exciting. That's interesting to me.
Yep. That's funny, the 7-year thing. Yeah. If the file box got cracked open, somebody's in trouble.
Yeah.
Somebody's in trouble. Okay. We talked a lot about this, but I'm going to ask you like just specifically, right? What do you think most companies get wrong about modernizing finance? We talked about like some of the it's inertia, but what are some of the things, like the mistakes that you have seen them make or you see them make just through the work that Ramp is doing?
Yeah. We talked about not architecting your flow, right? So thinking through deploying software, then not thinking through like how all of these pieces work from transaction up to reporting. You really want to think through your stack, think through your data flow, make sure you're building a stack that can work, not just for today, but where you're going over the next couple of years. You don't want to change up software 6 months every year.
Yep.
Number two would be and we talked about this a little bit, the additional cost of software. Obviously, there's what's on the order form, but there's all of this additional cost that you want to think through. Those are usually the biggest things that companies get wrong about finance. I don't know. What do you think? What comes to mind for you?
It depends on where you came from, right? So if you came from public accounting, you don't have any operational experience. Operational experience is so valuable. If you don't have operational experience, you only can create so much value in the organization. But if you're in public accounting, you're used to being a profit center. You're used to being the front person, like you're generating revenue. So you're important in a way that is different. If you've only ever worked in corporate finance, you're a cost center, you're a G&A function. If you've never had and knew what it felt like to be the lead singer, where you're a profit center, I think you are robbed a little bit of what it means to create value. And there's more you can do with the right operational experience, the right mindset, to partner with different areas of the business, whether it's be go-to-market, technology, people function. There's a lot of value you can create, but I think there's not a perfect recipe for how to get the right experience to develop the right mindset. And your experience was because you did a lot of different stuff and you figured it out. Maybe inherently you were just more naturally lean this way, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Part of the reason why I focused so much on the tech stack was so that I could automate the transaction layer. I can get myself out of the day-to-day and focus on providing strategic value back to the company. I know everybody wants to say that, but the real value is partnering up with other departments, understanding their business. We in finance, by the way, we have a like really great view over the entire company. Different departments are siloed. They don't know what other departments are doing. Finance can see the entire playing field. And so because of that, we can make connections. So as we partner with different department heads, as we help them with their work, we can make connections into how their work, their business drives and interacts with other parts of the business. I think that is a valuable space that we can play, a valuable role that will drive value. And so I obviously finance has traditionally been like a cost center, but I think we can be a revenue enabler
100%.
if you just change your mindset a little bit.
Yep. And that's also an opt-in thing. It's like you gotta want to do that. Sometimes it can feel super safe to be the man or woman behind the curtain, just controlling the purse strings and controlling the finances. But you got to get out. I think you're going to have to get out in front. You're going to have to be a thought partner for the rest of the organization. And again, it goes back to, I think that there's a talent skill mismatch. And I remember, you probably remember this too, like the most coveted job when I was in public accounting was the $100,000 controller job. That's what most people wanted to do. I just want to go find $100,000 job, do it for 25 years and retire. That's not available anymore. You're just looking for that. Like that's just not a thing anymore. I just think there's an evolution of the talent profile that needs to happen. And I think that's probably one of the biggest limiting factors. inside any company right now. You could get
Yeah,
lucky and get.
but that's a huge opportunity for any young person entering the space.
Yep.
And if you can seize that opportunity, you could be very valuable in the market.
100%. I'm
and so
hoping more people want to come into it. There should be more people that want to go, because the last 5 years, there's 20% less accountants
yes,
than there was. And there's a reason for that. Like anybody who's saying it's not about whether it's 150 hours of like nobody cares if it's 120 credit hours or 150. They don't want to be CPAs in the traditional sense. They just don't. The work's not interesting to them.
But the traditional sense of being a CPA is gone anyway. So it's,
Yes.
I think we are going to have technology that meets where people are. And I think our people are also going to meet the technology. So yes, we may not have enough CPAs today, but technology is going to enable us not to need as many CPAs. And then the CPAs that are coming into accounting, into finance work will be much more tech enabled, much more AI enabled. And I think 100%. They'll be able to do way more than what a CPA could have done 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it's like the universities need to do the boots on the ground work. And we can help, you can help, we can help. Just trying to tell the right story about what a career in finance or accounting can look like for you. If you're turned off by the stigma of what you've heard, there's a very different view of that today. And I think we need to do a better job telling that story. And yeah, there's so much cool stuff that you could do with that background now, because I think to be a really good entrepreneur, at some point you have to develop and understand finance and accounting to some extent. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult. Unless you get lucky and you build a unicorn and money doesn't matter, but that doesn't happen to many people.
Either you understand your financials or you partner up with someone who understands the financials and can enable you as a founder if you don't have that skill set. Although anybody listening to this podcast coming into this space will probably have some experience with financials, or they partner with someone like you has that experience and can take in. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I have a lot of passion around like the problems with the industry and stuff, man. But I think there's nothing but green space. I think that if you're young in your career, you should be excited about the prospects of what you can do with it. And it's never been more wide open in terms of like different career path opportunities.
Yeah, I totally agree. I got my CPA 2010, and I remember reading, I don't know, I had 4 big Becker books. It was like reg, financial, tax.
Like there's a business law.
Audit, business law. Yeah, it's probably And tomorrow, that needs to change. I feel one of these needs to be technology, using AI. That's going to be the future, because all of that reg, all of that tax, you don't need to know that by heart. You need to understand how it works, whatever. But doing that research is all going to be through AI, to be able to prompt the system to ask it a question and get the right information back. For sure, you need to evaluate it, make sure it's good advice before you deploy it. But being able to take a test based on just remembering things or rote knowledge is not going to be the future. Man.
It's silly. And so much emphasis gets placed on it. It's not fair to the kids that are going through it and they're being told this is the path. It bothers me. But anyways, let's keep rolling, man. So I got a couple more questions for you. This is fun. You're moderating me back. This is fun. You'd be a good podcast host. In terms of the low-hanging fruit with AI and technology, what are the things that right now, if you're doing them by hand, you need to stop? These things should easily be automated away today. Just the thought starters for folks that are curious.
Yeah, for sure. The transaction layer, if you are doing something over and over again, how can you deploy AI to do that? Whether it be a bot or just an Excel spreadsheet that you're manually reviewing, how can you deploy AI or an LLM to do a big chunk of that work, maybe 90% of the way there, and you just check the last 10%? Things like financial analysis, right? We're talking about like BVA work, month over month analysis. That's probably a great use case for AI. At least try it out, right? Before you get started, you can put in a bunch of different decks that you've done before or financial reports that you've done before, put it in, train up a ChatGPT, and then say, okay, now here's the new data. Help me with a first draft of this. I think that's a great way to deploy AI. And what was, sorry, remind me the question. Let me go back.
Yeah, but not in this task that you're confident a lot of people are still doing the wrong way today, that they should be exploring AI to do.
Yeah, transactional layer for sure. I think I'm excited for things like journal entries and month-end close, right? We all have like month-end close checklists where we have 30 different things, and we have to do balance sheet reconciliations, book journal entries to make sure everything's correct. I don't think we're at the world today where we can just deploy a bot to do that and be really confident it's done, but I think we're getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
So I would start experimenting with certain balance sheet reconciliations to see how you can deploy AI to do some of that work for you, because I think it's getting better and better. So start with a very easy month-end close checklist item that you do every single month. See if you can deploy a bot or AI for that before you move on to more complex things.
Yeah. I've said this a few times on the podcast, but I haven't said it to you yet, Dave. So I'll say it again. So I'm going to steal this from my executive coach, who's super brilliant. Professional services historically have provided 3 buckets of value. There's knowledge, which Google commoditized away a long time ago. You don't get to charge for that anymore. There's insights, which AI commoditizes away. And you just described how it is doing that now, and tools are doing that. And there's strategy. And the only place I think that you can create value anymore, and you still maybe get away with the insights thing, but you can't charge a ton of money for it. And you certainly can't differentiate with that anymore. It has to be focused on strategy. And I view strategy simply as, what is the greatest pain point that I can solve? If I can solve the greatest pain point for my CEO, for my client, then I have actually contributed some strategic value to them. And also, oftentimes I think strategy gets bastardized. People blow it up and over celebrate it, but that's really all it is. Like, you solved a critical pain point or something that matters in the business.
I thought you were going to say one of the ways to provide value would be like time. A lot of times you get a professional services or consultant just to bring forward something you can do yourself, but maybe you just don't have the time to do. And I think with AI, you can gain a lot of time back, because AI, for just a few cents, can do something that you would have taken hours or days to do, and do it in seconds for you.
I'd bucket that in strategy, because that's more like systems integration stuff. You're making their infrastructure better. I don't think that's knowledge or insights. I think that's really just making the whole org work better. But that's a pain. You just described a pain point, like super inefficient. This seems silly. I'm counting pennies on my desk all day long. There's got to be a better way. You're solving pain. And I think just the orientation needs to be towards like, where's the pain? How can I use my experience and my know-how to solve that pain? And that would be my definition of what strategic work is.
Yeah. So that means that your firm over time will move away from bookkeeping tasks, which you will automate away, move to more strategic work for your clients. And I think that's where people want to spend their time. And that's what your clients want. Well, your clients don't want bookkeeping services. They have to have bookkeeping services. Ultimately, what your clients want are the insights, the strategic decisions, the guidance on how to move their company forward, become more profitable, move into a new space, make more revenue, right? Those are the things that they ultimately care about. And that's what your firm can continue to
We're working on it, man.
To give them.
We're working on it. Technology has enabled that type of business today, which is cool. That's why it's fun to be doing it. But it's a lot of change, man. It's a lot of mindset stuff. It's a lot of just making sure that everybody's ready for it. And even your clients have to get used to working with you and expecting different things from you too. So it's not something that you can't just flip a light switch and just change the whole world on everybody, because there is still a baseline expectation for what the thing is.
Totally.
That you provide. So it's really interesting.
Let me ask you a question actually before we go.
Shoot.
So I work at Ramp, right? And you guys are a partner, right? Hiline's a partner. Love to have it. As one of our partners, what's one or two features or functionality that we don't have that you'd love to see us deploy over the next year?
One of the challenges with a spend management solution like Ramp, which is ultimately where you started, and there's others that have the same issue, is it's tied to a credit card, right? So sometimes it's really hard to get someone to change credit cards. This is probably talked about on a daily basis. There's other solutions that are offering that. It's credit card agnostic, but it's not necessarily purpose built for the lower end of the market either. It's always a tough sell. If you're a founder, like those Amex points, depending on your business, like that's your travel budget for the year. You know what I mean? So that's always a tough sell. It sounds like the controls are good and like some of the automation, but I really traveling to Europe for 2 weeks out of the year on my Amex point. So I don't know, that's necessarily like a feature thing as much as I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And there's reasons that you haven't done it yet, but that's really the only thing. Other than that, man, I think Ramp is an awesome tool.
That's
it really
awesome.
is.
I have
Did I answer your question?
No, you did
Is that
answer
fair?
my question for sure, for sure. Obviously, the software I think is the most valuable piece when it comes to this, but you make a valid point. Ultimately, like Ramp, we give cash back directly right back to the business. It's
Yep.
the business making the purchase, and so we give a percentage of every transaction,
Same,
back
yes,
to the
which is
business.
great.
Yeah, which
And
makes
some
sense.
people love that more. It just depends on the persona, right? So sometimes it's a
Totally.
non-issue. People are like, yeah, that sounds good. Sometimes you're like, I got a trip coming up to Fiji and I was planning on using my Amex.
For sure.
This
And
is
you can use it with Ramp. By the way, you can use that cash back on flights easily, for sure.
Yep, I get it, man. Okay, next 3 to 5 years, what are you most excited about in finance and accounting tech? Where are we
We
going?
talked about a little bit. I think automation of the transaction layer, using bots, using operators to do a lot of the work for us. I am super excited for that technology to be much more approachable, much easier for companies, for individuals to deploy. I think a lot of technology over in the past, especially for finance teams, except for Excel, had to be administered from like the office of the CFO, right? You had to buy technology and deploy your team. Excel, a little bit differently. Each individual can use it and you can go very far with Excel. I think a lot of AI, especially operators, are going to be similar, right? An individual will be able to deploy it to do work. You won't necessarily need that to come from a central purchase, right? The CFO buys something for the entire team to deploy. Instead, operators, AI, LLMs can all be deployed from individual team members to do work, whether that be for the team or for just for
Yep.
me and myself. I think that's really exciting. That allows for a lot more experimentation, a lot more bottoms up learning and deploying technology. So I'm really excited for that.
It's going to be really interesting and fun to see like how much progress we make with technology and automation and how the profession is like anybody who's in finance and accounting and probably even the beneficiaries, which are founders and operators and teams, how it all comes together for them. But it all should all be value accretive. Everybody should be getting smarter, better data. You're untethered from your desk. Like you are just free to go build a business and there should be no inhibitors of progress because of finance or accounting.
I agree. Yes, I agree. I'm excited for that.
Okay.
I'm here for it.
Couple rapid fire questions, man. You ready?
Rapid fire. All right, let's do it.
Okay. Saquon Barkley. Good dude. Is he a good dude? What'd you hear?
I've heard he's the nicest guy. Everybody on our team came back from meeting with him, the shoot, saying he's the nicest guy. He's a true team player and he doesn't have a bad word to say about anybody, which I thought was really cool to hear.
Yes, I've heard the same thing. He seems super genuine and he just seems like a good teammate, which I love. Okay. What, if you can share this, what's the most exciting thing that we'll see from Ramp in the next 6 to 12 months?
The most exciting thing from Ramp, launched Treasury. So I think I would have said that a week ago. We just launched Treasury. It's a business account, similar to a bank account.
Yep.
We're not a bank, so we are a technology company, but we're going to be adding a lot more features that will make adding a Ramp business account, adding Ramp Treasury to your Ramp stack will enable you to do a lot more fun things and speed up your operations. And it'll be like 1 + 1 = 3. So I think you'll see a lot more of that in the coming weeks and months.
Right on. Okay. And we're going to have fun with the last one. I'm going to flip it to you. One thing we didn't cover today that you want to ask me. Keep it on your toes.
Oh, okay. I got a question here. All right. We saw almost the implosion of Bench back in late December 27th. It was like 3 days before the new
This is
year.
going to take another 15 minutes, but keep going.
For sure. So when it happened, what was your first reaction? And did you get any customers that came from Bench over to Hiline? And then last question, what do you think is the future of Bench under the new ownership?
Oh, dude, you're coming with multi-layered questions. Okay. First, let me answer the first part. Okay. I'll start by saying I have a lot of respect for what Bench tried to do. They took a swing at a traditionally underserved small business market. I think they built a good product in a good service generally for what it was. And they were very early in seeing that problem and trying to solve for it. So my first reaction was I felt obviously a lot of empathy for everybody involved, right? You never want to see anybody not be successful, especially when you take all the risk. The team that built company, good on them. But also there was some validation there too, because I think about for Hiline, what we do, there's three like buckets of competition. There's accounting firms, traditional accounting firms with embedded what they call CAS practices, which is like the worst acronym for it ever. But like they have like governance restrictions, and there's reasons why they're also mainly in the mid-market, but there's reasons why I think that we can go a lot faster than them. So I don't really compete with them. I never see them. There's Bench. There's other venture-backed, what I'll call managed services companies that originally started out as automate away accountant companies that raised a lot of money. They brought a ton of innovation to the industry. They disrupted it, which I love. They proved with a marketing budget that you can apply what you would traditionally see on SaaS go-to-market principles to a managed services company. And they did it, and they got really big. But I always felt like it was the wrong capital for that type of business, because you're never going to grow into the valuations that have accreted over time. So like I respect the effort. I respect what they tried to do. I just think it was the wrong capital, because it's destined for like that day of reckoning where it no longer works for everybody involved. And I've always had that thesis, and it was proven to be true with Bench. So like I do empathize for Bench, but I personally saw that as like inevitable. And I was right. There's also companies in the middle like Hiline, and there's a lot of companies in the middle. It's a very fragmented industry. I think we're kind of the best of both. We bring the trust that we're finance people at our core, right? We're not a product-led leadership team. We understand services, how important they are, but we also understand, to your point, Dave, like how important it is to make sure that you are doing things the most efficient way possible, so you're price competitive, so your customers have the best systems, the best data, the best experience. And I feel like the winner in the space is going to come out of the middle, and I'm hoping that one of those winners will be Hiline. And I think that there's room for a couple really big companies out there over the next 5 to 10 years. That was my initial read on it. We have gotten some customers from Bench. I think there's a lot of companies out there who are just searching for solutions. They don't necessarily, the way that the whole thing was handled, I think there was just a lot of trust erosion that happened. Yeah. So I understand it. So we didn't like target them at all. I think it just, I'm assuming every company that does accounting and bookkeeping has gotten a Bench customer at this point. And I can do nothing but wish the best for the group that bought it. And hopefully,
I'm wishing the best for the new ownership. I'm just a little confused by the new ownership, because if you look at the CEO is now trying to put together a group to buy TikTok for $30 billion. And then if I'm a Bench customer, I've gone through an up and down at a really tough time of the year. There's uncertainty. And now I see the CEO that just acquired Bench in a distraction mode with buying TikTok. It's just very confusing. I would feel if I was
again, good on that team. Obviously there's some capital behind them, and there must be a strategy there. I don't see how it all fits together, how it can all work. I don't know, man. I'm the eternal optimist, but if I'm a Bench customer, I'm definitely scratching my head and wondering like where are the priorities here? Is it somewhere else? And it's just been noisy. As finance and accounting is not one of those things where you want it to be noisy. You almost don't want to hear anything at all. And then you feel safe. It's not meant to be shaky is a function.
But I like that you're an eternal optimist. I think that's a good way of looking at it. And you stay focused on building your business, and your clients will like you for it.
You're wrapping up the podcast for me. This is awesome.
You wrap it up then. Go ahead. Of course.
No, that's it, man. No, this has been fun, Dave. I think it's been fun to nerd out on finance and accounting with you, and look forward to catching up. Do you do the conference circuit?
I'm just doing a little bit more now. So I just got invited to a conference out in San Jose in 2 weeks. It'll be the CFO/FP&A Summit, which would be really fun. That's in 2 weeks. I want to do more. This is 2025. Okay. Let's go do some more conferences.
Right.
I'm sure it happens.
And then you guys are going to give me an invite to hang out with Saquon and his team when they make the Super Bowl next year.
Totally. As soon as I get that invite, you're coming with me. Let's do it.
All right. Dave, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Good rest of the day.
Yes.
Do it again soon. All right.
Have a great day.
Cheers, man. Bye.